In today's video, I build a sick gaming system for $650 using parts from Amazon. But before we get into that, today's video is sponsored by the better retailer Micro Center with their insane clearance sale. Massive markdowns on a huge variety of tech stuff, be it storage, cases, even resin 3D printers and mini PCs. And if you live in Phoenix, heads up, the 30th ever Micro Center is coming your way. Sign up for a free 128 gig flash drive when the store opens later this year. Also, play around with your future system configuration using Micro Center's custom PC builder. Click on the links for everything down below. Thank you Micro Center for sponsoring today's video. When building a new gaming system, the first thing you need to do is decide what CPU brand to use because it dictates quite a lot of the other components you're going to use. Luckily for gaming these days, the option is pretty straightforward because on the one hand, you've got the overachieving favorite sibling AMD, which has a pretty compelling option at almost every price point. Whereas on the other hand, you've got Intel, and I don't want to use too technical a terminology here, but Intel is just a syphilitic donkey at this point, waiting to be put out of its misery. So you've decided on AMD? Good. I definitely wasn't leading you anywhere with that. But just because you've decided on AMD doesn't mean you're done yet, because we still need to decide which socket we want to use for our system. Now you have two options here. If you have a healthy budget, I would definitely recommend going with AM5, because, well, that's their newest platform, and that's where you can get the latest, greatest, amazing CPUs. But considering that we have a very limited budget for this build, I decided to go with the older AM4 platform. Because despite AM4 being even older than your mom, it still offers a hella upgrade path from where we're buying in. But for now, we're really cheaping out. I decided to get a Ryzen 5 5500, which is still a good CPU. You get 6 cores, 12 threads. It uses DDR4 RAM, which is cheaper than DDR5, although not for long. Apparently there are shortages happening for DDR4 and the prices are creeping up pretty quickly. But for now, I was able to get some pretty affordable DDR4 RAM. And another massive advantage of AM4 is that the motherboards are a lot more affordable. I basically just bought the cheapest B550 board that I could get with Wi-Fi, and yeah, it was pretty affordable for a motherboard. But with that, let's open up the box and have a closer look at the motherboard. Ooh, Wi-Fi antenna. Now there are some features on this cheap motherboard that are designed to remind us of our serfdom, like the lack of integrated rear I/O shield and the lack of any USB Type-C ports, which in 2025 is a bit of a bummer. That's the kind of thing that would make me spend a little bit more on a fancier motherboard, but at least it has some really fast Type-A ports and it's got enough expansion on it for us to drop a Type-C card in later if we wanted to. But aside from those things, this isn't the worst motherboard. I mean, we've got two M.2 slots, which is kind of nice, and well, we've got a hole for us to put our CPU in, which is the main thing. The power delivery looks pretty wimpy, but for our Ryzen 5 5500 and even some reasonably faster chips, it should be fine. Oh no, Amazon violated our box. Oh. Wow. Now at this point, the Wraith Stealth, which is the cooler that comes with budget AMD CPUs, is pretty much legendary for being a very usable stock cooler. Although for some reason when mounting it, AMD doesn't use its own mounting brackets for their stock cooler. So you have to unscrew them and then put them in a place where you definitely won't lose them because you may need them later down the line when you upgrade to a different cooler. And unfortunately, when screwing down the Wraith Stealth, it does feel a little bit like you're Jeffrey Dahmering a baby animal. That's just a natural part of the mounting process. So don't be too worried about that unless you actually enjoy the process, in which case you should definitely seek professional help immediately because you may actually be a psychopath. Now in terms of memory, I decided to go with the trusty old Team Force kit. This is only a 16 gig kit because I wanted to keep costs down, but this is like the minimum amount of RAM you should get in a PC these days. I would recommend 32, but at least with this we have the option to upgrade pretty easily later on if we wanted to. In terms of looks and speed, it's nothing fancy. It's just a 3200 MHz kit, but you know, it's get the job done. And then finally, in terms of memory, I decided to go with this Patriot M.2 drive, which unfortunately isn't really going to impress any of the Discord eagles you're chatting up, but it's a budget build, what can you do? This will be enough for Windows and like one game, I guess, depending on how big the game is. It's so cute. Now, to mount the little M.2 drive, you have to use the included M.2 drive mounting screws. And luckily, Asus has helped me overcome my greatest weakness by labeling the correct hole. Oh yeah, that's a good looking core of our system. Now the next thing I'd recommend doing is dropping your graphics card in here, hooking up your power supply, and then testing all of the components before you drop it into your case. So that if any of your components arrived dead, it'll be much easier to diagnose. You won't have to dig around in all of your case, and you wouldn't have spent as much effort getting to that point. Now, I'm not going to do that now because A, I'm a bit of a badass and I just like to live dangerously. But two, and this is the main reason, I also like to build tension in my videos around the graphics card reveal later in the video. So what I'm going to do next is just drop this straight into the case and hope that none of the components are dead. So any future Dawid suffering is very much in the hands of Amazon. This is your responsibility now, Amazon. Or Asus, I guess, maybe. Now, choosing a budget case these days has actually become pretty hard because they've gotten really expensive. You used to be able to get a decent MATX case for about 50 to 60 Canadian dollars, whereas now you're looking more at around 100 Canadian dollars. Luckily, this NZXT H3 Flow, which seems like quite a nice case, was on sale, and I managed to pick it up for about 80 Canadian dollars. So that's kind of what I'd recommend doing at this point, is very much shopping the sales for cases. That is an interesting case design. Now, this H3's design is actually kind of fascinating. It doesn't have normal feet that lift the bottom of the case off the ground. Instead, they've got this curved mesh bit on the side that gives ventilation into the power supply basement in the bottom. Which means you do have to put your power supply in fan facing up. But that's pretty cool because it means that you can potentially put this case on a carpet and you're not going to have massive airflow issues with it over time and like dust buildup issues and stuff. So that is pretty smart. Now, this power supply is nothing fancy, it's not modular or anything, but luckily we have a decently roomy basement in our H3, so this shouldn't be too much of a problem, and it's 650 watts, so there's reasonable power. Yeah, I think you could do worse than this power supply. Hopefully it's not an IED, fingers crossed. Ooh, there's even some ventilation on the back, captive thumb screws. It's all fancy for this price. And look at that, despite this not being a modular power supply, we've still plenty of space for cables. It's pretty good. Also, I forgot to show me screwing it in. That's what it looks like. I did a good job, all 4 screws. At which point, I always like to do a little bit of pre-cable management, get the big power cables like the motherboard and CPU power cables more or less where they need to go before dropping the motherboard in. Wow, Asus, 1998 cold and it wants its rear I/O shield back. What is this garbage? Ugh. Now, when it comes to my cable management technique, I'm not really sure how to explain it. There's just an intuition involved that you build up through experience. It's kind of like making a good bolognese. You're just crossing the river by feeling the stones, you know? So now that we've done most of the work assembling our pretty exciting looking budget system, the final thing we have to do is decide on a graphics card. Now statistically, I think what most people do is just pick the most expensive NVIDIA graphics card they can afford and drop it into their system. At this point, NVIDIA is basically selling the technological equivalent of hot honey flavored heroin. Even if it's not the best option for a price point, people do still buy their graphics cards because, I don't know, I guess we've got a bubble to inflate or whatever. And if that's what you want to do, NVIDIA did recently launch launch the RTX 5050, which fits in this budget. You can get it for about 350 Canadian dollars. But for that, you're getting a graphics card with 8 gigs of video memory and a GPU that kind of struggles to keep up with previous generation offerings from AMD and Intel. So once like the RX 9060 comes out, that's likely going to be a better option. Although don't quote me on that, it may change. AMD often screws this kind of thing up. Now you can also go with an Intel B580 GPU, which gives you a little bit more video memory. But the thing with the B580 GPU is A, like I mentioned before, Intel is in the process of syncing, so we don't know how long you're going to have driver support for that. And B, that graphics card prefers gaming at 1440p, which is a higher resolution than most people game at, especially in this budget. So if you've got a 1080p monitor, that might not be the best option for you. So what I decided to go with, just to be a bit of a contrarian, is this, which is an AMD RX 7600. It's also an 8 gig GPU, but it performs, depending on the use case, a little bit better than the RTX 5050. In fact, I recently did a whole video comparing a bunch of graphics cards in this price point, so if you want a bunch of detail on it, go check out that video. But for now, we're gonna see how the RX 7600 performs. Actually, I forgot to mention this, but if you want my opinion on this, I wouldn't buy any of these graphics cards at this price point currently, just at this very moment. I would probably buy a used alternative for the same amount instead, because you're gonna get better value for money that way. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Let's drop the graphics card in. Ooh, that's quite a pretty looking version of the card, this XFX one. Oh yeah. Yeah, wow, that's a really nice version. You can get a nice metal backplate. Okay, so now comes the scary part. We gotta see if me skipping steps is gonna screw me over now. Hopefully not. Okay, I see a fan spinning. That is the least RGB system I have seen in a long time, which is cool. I kind of like the not lightness of it. Okay, HDMI 2, that's a good start. Hey, it works! So now I'm just gonna install some Windows on it, and then we get to play some games on it. Very exciting. But first, now I added that light after the fact so that you could see what's going on inside, because this system is real dark. This is what it looks like with that light off. In person it looks great, but not so much on video, that's why I added the light. Anyway, with that I installed a fresh copy of Windows 11, set the system up so that we could see how it performs in games. Now we're going to start off with CS2. It should be a very good test of the single-threaded performance of our CPU, and yeah, I'm really curious to see how it handles it with our 7600. Wow, okay, we are getting about 200 frames per second at 1080p low settings on CS2, which by modern standards is not super high. And I think a lot of that has to do with our little Ryzen 5 5500, but this is extremely playable. This is a very usable result. Wow, that was quite the shot. You're not going to be complaining about the game running this way unless you are like a pro CS2 player. And the nice thing about this is that it should scale really well to 1440p because we've still got some headroom in our GPU left. So even if you've got a higher end monitor, you're gonna get about this performance from it. Yeah, jumping up to 1440p barely loses you any frame rate. So you're getting a very similar result, and even at 1440p, we're still not getting full GPU utilization, which is kind of normal for CS2. Anyway, let's try another game. Oh, Cyberpunk's running well. This is 1080p high settings, so we're not going balls to the wall here, but this is without any upscaling, and we're getting in the mid to high 70s in terms of frame rate. The game feels very playable, and yeah, this is good. Now again, with Cyberpunk, like with Counter-Strike, our CPU is a little bit of an issue. It's skirting up there. It's having to work real hard to play this game at high settings. So I think that with this system, you would probably want to upgrade the CPU in like a year and a half or whatever, but this is good performance. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna let the game run for a while and we're gonna see where the temperatures top out, especially considering that we have pretty much full system utilization here, even on the CPU. Now in terms of power draw, it's pretty chilled. The system is not going to make your room all hot and bothered. Well, after a while of running, the temperatures didn't really go up much, and they're pretty good. I think the GPU could be a little bit cooler if there was a fan in the front of the case, but there's nothing to be worried about here in terms of temperatures. Finally, I wanted to try an Unreal Engine 5 game, considering that engine is slowly consuming all of gaming. And with Stalker 2 at 1080p medium settings with no upscaling, it was running okay. Stalker 2 doesn't feel great, running at around 60-ish frames per second, but for this price point, I guess it's okay, if pretty stuttery. Interestingly, turning on Quality Fidelity FX basically didn't help our frame rate in the town bit where I am, which makes sense considering that Stalker 2 is very CPU bound. Dropping an X3D CPU into the system should make a huge difference to the performance. Let me know down below and subscribe to the channel if you want me to do a follow-up video where we upgrade the system to see what kind of performance we can unlock from it. However, when you leave the town bit, the frame rate does get quite a lot better with Fidelity FX on. And then the final thing I tried was the sound card in our budget motherboard that wasn't great. It could just about manage to run my Sennheiser HD 58Xs, but it was really struggling. I basically had to crank the volume and it sounded aight. Which brings me to the end of my budget Amazon build video. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you thought of the little system and what configuration you would use at this price point. And until the next video, thank you for watching. Bye bye.